Colorado State University embarks on a new decade, we take a retrospective view of the events that shaped our university in 1979. It was a year of major research breakthroughs, international scientific cooperation, and of course the day-to-day struggle in the quest for knowledge. The dedication of the new veterinary teaching hospital marked the final step in a 15-year development program for veterinary medical education. The $10 million facility, 2 blocks west of College Avenue on Drake Road, contains more than 139,000 square feet of floor space in the main hospital building and another 32,000 square feet in the barns. More than $2 million worth of the finest medical equipment and supplies help make the complex not only unique in the region, but one of the best of its kind in the nation. Spacious examining and operating rooms highlight the hospital, and the clinic is equipped with the most advanced surgery and X-ray equipment available. A testament to the university and a credit to the profession. 2 of the top stories in 1979 were indicative of President A.R. Chamberlain's leadership. The 79-80 fiscal year brought another in a long line of battles with the Joint Budget Committee of the state legislature. This time, the JBC threatened to hold salary increases to an amount less than the inflation rate. At 2 massive meetings of state classified and then faculty members, Chamberlain outlined an administrative plan of action and some specific problem areas.
That we have asked for further deliberation and consideration by our elected officials regarding their tentative proposals in order that hopefully we can moderate them. Now, why are they so substantial and what are they? The first proposal to come forth is enrollment. Superficially, the suggestion that CSU enrollment should be reduced by...
But just 6 months later, the winds of change had shifted for the hard-driving administrator of the last decade. After weeks of speculation, Dr. Chamberlain held a press conference in the Student Center to make a special announcement.
This letter is to request the State Board of Agriculture permit me to resign from the position of President, Colorado State University on December 31, 1980, in such a manner as to ensure an effective transition on behalf of the university, the board, and me.
Displaying the character he had maintained throughout his tenure as president, Chamberlain made the process for change a smooth one. Within 4 weeks, academic vice president Charles O'Neat was named interim president. Being a trained researcher himself, there was no doubt that much of Chamberlain's influence reflected on the research at CSU, which became nationally recognized during his tenure. One of the bright spots at CSU is its solar energy research. Late in 1978, Dr. Joel Dubois announced a major breakthrough in solar cell technology. These wafers produce electricity from the solar energy they absorb. The technology developed at CSU has produced the largest wafer to date with the best combined efficiency rating in comparison to the cost of producing the cell. This means scientists are approaching the economic feasibility of making acres of solar cells from very small quantities of raw materials. Someday, cells like these may cover 2/10 of the land in the U.S., and that would be enough to supply the country's total power needs. But until that time, we must use what technology we have as efficiently as possible. The development of solar energy devices is currently reaching the limits of technology, but the systems in which solar devices are used could be operated more efficiently. The CSU Solar Village is actually a full-size laboratory for study of that systems approach. Research during the last 5 years has been geared toward better utilization of the energy that solar collectors gather. More efficient methods of installation, house design, and usage are being developed into solar system applications, not merely solar devices. They were once a common fixture on farms and ranches, rising up out of the dry plains like lonely sentinels of the vast open spaces. They pumped underground water to livestock purposefully and dutifully, but now most are forgotten artifacts from a past age, interesting only to photographers and nostalgia buffs. That old idea, using wind for power, has surfaced amid the search for alternative energy sources, but with a facelift. This metal monster, like a giant egg beater, has been whipping those nagging northern Colorado winds into usable electrical energy. The only unit of its kind at an American dairy, the prototype demonstrated the feasibility of putting wind to work. The hardware on this windmill needs altering to operate at slower wind speeds and higher efficiency. But estimates from the project indicate that once windmills are mass-produced, a 200-cow dairy could recover the initial cost within about 5 years through savings in electric bills. Saving gasoline is the aim of these CSU students who have found a new use for alcohol by putting it in an automobile's fuel tank. The senior class project of mechanical and electrical engineering students, with funding from the Alumni Association, this vehicle is designed and built to be energy efficient. Fiberglass and graphite take the place of steel and aluminum, making the car actually stronger than, but weighing a whopping 600 pounds less than, a similar vehicle made of conventional material. The turbocharged engine has been modified to burn methanol instead of gasoline. Methanol can be distilled from coal, wood, or agricultural wastes, and it burns cleaner and more efficiently than gasoline. When finished, the car and some of the project members were off to Detroit for competition with more than 30 entries from the U.S. and Canada. The car scored well in noise tests, cost presentation, and student innovations, and took first place in the unconventional fuels category. More importantly, perhaps, the unique featherweight chassis caught the fancy of General Motors personnel and Department of Transportation representatives. Good work by CSU undergraduates. But of course, being a student is not all hard work. The traditional events of student activities are still popular on campus. The old forestry days are now natural resources days, but the competition is still keen in many of the old standby events. And of course, there's college days. Some play in the mud while others call it home. These Mexican hairless pigs are models, not because of their appearance, but their physiology. Having similar hearts and blood vessels to humans, Dr. Robert Phillips and his research team are using them to study diabetes. The team hopes to develop a colony of pigs that are susceptible to the disease. They are currently studying the diet of these oinkers, comparing high sugar and starch levels in the onset of diabetes. Phillips emphasizes there is neither a single cause nor a single cure, but believes diet to be a main factor in human diabetes. This research may prove the deadly disease is controllable through proper dietary measures. Being part of a research colony does not mean the pigs are without personality. Bottle-fed as infants, some are called by name, like to be petted, and even do a few tricks. Martha, for instance, is able to open more than just the mysteries of science. Speaking of mysteries, an international case highlights the first year of operation of the Center for Human Identification, headed by anthropology professor Mike Charney. For the center, perhaps the first of its kind in the world, it's not a case of whodunit, but who is it? Charney and his students reconstruct the features of a young woman's face by using landmarks on the skull, which was found in Banff National Park in Canada. Facial restoration is a relatively untouched area of forensic science, but can be used when routine methods such as dental records or fingerprints fail. The student recreation turns out remarkably similar to the model made by the Canadian authorities, who were also boning up on the technique with help from Charney. Through education, training, and research, Charney hopes to bring some organization to the somewhat chaotic state of body identification, since there are virtually no state or federal laws controlling it. Whether the center will have the muscle to coordinate these disjointed efforts, of course, remains to be seen. These rotund rodents are involved in a rather heavyweight research project with a two-pronged approach. The Department of Animal Sciences is researching better ways to fatten beef cattle, while the Department of Food Science and Nutrition is studying how to keep humans thin. The study may determine whether hereditary obesity is a result of the number or the size of fat cells, and if the number or size is a result of heredity, diet, or both. These little scale tippers could reveal important characteristics of fat cell development. The results might be used to develop tissue tests that could determine the future siring qualities of young bulls. Cattlemen can then select breeding bulls capable of producing offspring which are more efficient in converting feed to usable meat and fat. Similar tissue tests used on young humans might indicate whether early diet control is necessary to regulate obesity in later life. And better eating for you through better feeding of them might describe the research of animal science professor Dr. Donald Johnson. Johnson's feeding study will determine the benefits of various diets and feed additives. A respiration chamber measures the energy used by the animal and the amount of food that's converted to heat and methane. Then, by measuring the difference between the two, the researchers know how the food is converted to lean and fat tissue. Johnson also hopes to determine how much feed energy different cattle breeds need to grow and maintain weight, in addition to zeroing in on their best diet. Meanwhile, animal behavior specialist Phil Lehner is trying to put coyotes on a diet of their own by cutting out late-night snacks. Lehner and assistant Jack McGrew are investigating the effectiveness of Hungarian Commandor dogs in keeping sheep off the coyote's menu. Control of the coyote by lethal and non-lethal methods has not been particularly successful, so the canine patrol has been called in to run off the predators. The process of conditioning the protective pooches takes almost 3 years. First, the dogs are socialized with each other and given basic obedience training. Then they're introduced to the sheep. And finally, with the sheep and coyote together. The dogs are not trained to attack on command, but Lehner and his corps of behaviorists are trying to develop a tendency to attack if coyotes come into the vicinity. It's possible man's best friend can strike a workable balance between environmentalists and sheep producers. These shaggy night watchdogs work as a deterrent rather than extermination force, allowing the coyote to feed on destructive rabbits, rodents, and reptiles instead of lamb chops. With those kinky-haired canines around, maybe the sheep can learn to relax, which is what psychology professor Dr. Richard Swin is teaching endurance sport athletes. Several athletes begin a series of tests on a treadmill to document their condition. They are trained to visualize themselves performing the event in a relaxed manner. By switching on this imagery in their mind, their bodies respond to the message. After another session on the treadmill, the instruments confirm they do the same amount of work with less effort. Swin's psychological training helps the athletes relax different muscles and use less oxygen. So instead of getting overly psyched up for competition, future sporting contestants may calm down and relax their way to victory. But there's a different kind of relaxation training going on up at Pingree Park. Each summer, the Alumni Association sponsors the Vacation College, a weekend retreat offering CSU alums the chance to get back into the world of academics while enjoying a world of outdoor splendor. The American dream and what's happening to it is the underlying theme of each annual session. Alums interact with such respected professors as Drs. Evan Vlachos and Willard Eddy, discussing everything from mass society and the corruption of the elite to the transformation of self and society in the 1980s. It has all the fun and excitement of college, but without exams, and so far, without a mud bowl. If the Alumni College doesn't bring you back, homecoming will. It's a time for tradition, such as lighting the A, and an opportunity to keep up with the changes at CSU and in Fort Collins. New businesses, housing, and an ever-expanding campus seem to transform the face of the Choice City almost daily. The home formerly reserved for presidents, known as Greenhaven, took on a new look at this year's homecoming festivities. President Chamberlain cut the ribbon and formally pronounced Greenhaven the new home of the Alumni Center. Grads are cordially invited to stop by and visit, inspect, or just plain relax. The highlight of homecoming is generally considered to be the afternoon football clash. This homecoming proved to be the highlight of the Ram football season, as CSU stunned WAC runner-up San Diego State 37-3. The young Rams hit the road for the first 4 games, visiting Arizona, Arkansas, Utah State, and arch-rival Wyoming. They returned a weary 1-3, squeaking out a thrilling victory in Laramie. There were some bright spots through the season. Halfback Larry Jones gained nearly 200 yards against Arkansas. The defense, for the most part, hung together, and the offense, behind the gutsy leadership of quarterback Keith Lee, showed some scattered potency. The '79 season also saw unpredictable head coach Sarkar Slaney mix up his entrances to the home games. Sark and his crew finished 4-7-1 overall and 3-4 in the WAC. Not bad for being tabbed the league's worst in preseason polls. Football's flying in the fall not only signals the start of a new season, but a new semester as well. Over 18,000 students converged on the campus to partake in everyone's favorite activity, registration. There's no lack of eager minds to fill these halls of higher education, as the demand for admission was overwhelming. Despite the pressure on enrollment, Admissions and Records reports vacancies exist for qualified freshmen and transfer students. Last autumn, 16 of the top American male gymnasts also converged on the campus for the men's trials of the World's Gymnastics Championship Finals. The top 6 men in the competition would represent the United States in the World Championships later in Texas. ABC's Wide World of Sports telecast the competition live from Moby Gym. To no one's surprise, the competition came down between 2 of the more prominent superstars, Kurt Thomas and Bart Conner. Conner eventually won the competition, but it was the jam-packed crowd that won the thrill. A rare chance to catch a glimpse of some Olympic-class athletes who will represent us in Moscow, and some who won't. Pack up the mats, put away the pigskins, and batten down the bleachers, because here come the racing Rams. The schedule for the Ram Roundballers reads like a postseason tournament ladder, taking on Purdue, Indiana State, UCLA, Iowa, and Texas Tech. Then it's on to face a full schedule of always tough WAC conference foes. Coach Jim Williams, who heads into his 26th year as the Rams head man, returns 4 starters. JJ looks to high-flying Eddie Hughes, who averaged nearly 16 points a game as a freshman, and steady outside gunner Barry Young, who led the squad in scoring for the 2nd straight season. Besides his 2 all-WAC standouts, Williams feels he finally has sufficient depth to last the season. However, Moby Gym hosted more than athletic competitions. As the 1980 presidential races began heating up, Ronald Reagan stopped in to deliver the capstone address for CSU Business Day. Although unannounced at the time, he already was sounding very much like a presidential candidate.
$165 billion we sent to the OPEC nations. How many jobs would be created, how much energy, and how much prosperity if some of that $165 billion were being paid to American firms and retained here in the United States? The answer to breaking the OPEC ability at monopoly pricing is to turn the energy industry loose in the marketplace and let the incentives of the marketplace inspire it to find the sources of energy that we must have.
Just 2 months later, Reagan officially hit the campaign trail. Some prominent guests of CSU come to deliver, some to receive. This group of government officials from the Red Chinese Agricultural Ministry sought more than a hat and a handshake. Having a similar climate to ours and the need to upgrade their feedlots, crop production, animal care, and marketing, our newfound friends from the East came west in an attempt to catch up to the modern age. Of particular interest was the internationally respected Animal Reproduction Lab. Lab Director Bill Pickett gave the group a crash course in artificial insemination and embryo transfer technique. It's another small step in breaking down the Great Wall that divides the ideologies of 2 diverse yet similar countries. But CSU diplomacy shows no favoritism. These carrots, being inoculated with cancerous tumors, are destined for a journey into space aboard a Soviet biosatellite. Part of an agreement for scientific and technical cooperation between the Russians and Americans, this is actually the 2nd time CSU space carrots have made the journey. The scientists say, in addition to learning more about the effects of weightlessness on tumor growth, they are also realizing that space weightlessness and simulated weightlessness on Earth might not be the same. The common carrot, not only improving the eyesight in rabbits, but also enhancing the insight of international research. From space vegetables to space vehicles, the work of CSU scientists knows no bounds. NASA's hopes for galactic mass transit, the Space Shuttle, was scaled down and deployed in a wind tunnel at the CSU Fluid Dynamics and Diffusion Lab. Dr. Jack Cermak and his research team tested the wind force on the pint-sized shuttle and launch towers, as well as calculating wind conditions under which the 180-foot shuttle should not be launched. An understanding of the wind load is crucial, since only 1 inch of clearance separates the main rocket booster from the 2 auxiliary boosters on either side of the full-size spaceship. Work on the 1:100 scale model should help get the big bus off the ground in the early 1980s. The 1970s saw a change from unrest and violent activism to a more reflective and thoughtful approach to the problems that students face as individuals and as members of society. Today's students are learning ways to deal with these problems and the issues they will confront as tomorrow's alums. However, for the institution they leave behind, the coming decade signals perhaps the beginning of a crisis era. Higher education in general, and CSU in particular, faces decreasing budgets and increasing costs. The challenge of continuing to provide leadership roles in research, academics, and service to the state becomes even more difficult. For CSU, the 80s begin not with unrestricted confidence, but cautious optimism that there will still be resources available to meet that challenge.